Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of the Lost Decades podcast, covering the years 1700 BC to 1650 BC. Yes, that's right. It's our longest period we've ever done. We're getting crazy. We're doing
It
50 years
is.
at a time.
And funny enough, not a lot is happening.
I make if this was on Kalshi and you could make a bet, I would bet that this episode is going to be shorter than our last episode because our last episode was covering the shortest period of time we've covered. It was only 20 years, and I checked, and it was our longest episode that we ever recorded. So
Damn.
you can never predict what we're going to do, but
I mean, because yeah, this one, like, the world is in an interesting place. So,
I would say in my head it's kind of just like in the same place it was last episode. Like whatever we said last time, that's just continuing.
no, that is true. It's just that now we're waving past Hammurabi's grandkids, so it's like he's a long distant memory.
Yeah. This is so random, but like for some reason, I'm like my brain is so rotted. But this is even from TikTok. Just you saying grandpa. I always talk about my cat Gwendolyn and imagine
Hmm.
grandma, and I just imagine Gwendolyn's grandma. She was like, I'm just like I wonder if she's still alive.
Do you remember? Oh, sorry, I just can't remember her
But
name from the Europe trip. Remember, there was that girl's grandma, but it was actually her mom.
I actually don't know what you're talking about.
Oh man,
Now
it
you
was
now you actually are getting
Cambria's
very
grandma.
far afield. What?
Cambria's grandma. You don't remember that? That was
I
like
actually
a
don't remember that.
that
That's a
was like
deep
a
cut.
joke way back then. The chances of them listening to this are so abysmally low,
I
but yeah,
don't think they're gonna hear it.
like I mean,
Well,
we're talking from 2007 or 8 or whatever that was.
speaking of Coheed and Cambria,
Yeah.
um, I'm gonna start out talking about Egypt. So basically, there's this book that I read a couple years ago that's literally just called A History of Egypt from Earliest Times to the Present by Jason Thompson.
Hmm.
Um, and I recommend it. There's obviously a lot of books about Egypt out there. There's literally a whole like area of study called Egyptology, but I thought it was pretty solid. It has that thing where in the middle of the book it has a bunch of pictures of stuff that it talks about in the book. And anyway, I went back and finally reread the beginning, and I kind of just summarized a lot of stuff that it talked about in there. And I just sort of wanted to go through it a little bit because before we get too far away from like ancient Egypt, I wanted to just kind of like thought it was interesting some of this stuff. So basically, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but they traded with Lebanon for wood, and that's one thing I
We
see
talked about
coming up a
Lebanon,
lot.
but not for wood. That's what's interesting. I didn't
Right.
realize that's what they were trading for.
Yeah, and I think on the flag of Lebanon there's a tree.
Oh.
Um, but I don't know. I feel like there's not a ton of trees now because they probably a lot of them got cut down. But um, yeah. Anyway, they had a lot of trees in Lebanon, and sort of maybe they're like the England of this area. But another thing is that the word pharaoh means big house, and it originally referred to the royal palace, and then it just kind of like eventually, it almost be like if the word king meant like throne or something.
Hmm.
And he had like supernatural power. He was basically worshipped as a god, and he was kind of seen as like the one person that could talk to like the gods. So he technically was led like every like religious service by like a priest was like technically he was like in charge of all of them, and the priests were just like doing it in his like name or
Hmm.
whatever.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and basically one reason why they were so, I mean, I know this is probably common knowledge, but just to reiterate that like one reason why they cared so much about the pyramids and tombs and mummification and all this stuff is that in their religion they thought, that you could live forever, so they wanted to
Bring that
just
stuff with
have
them,
as
right?
the nicest stuff as possible. Yeah. And let's see.
I love the
They
idea of that.
the way they taxed people was like they would just tax them with whatever they had. So it's like if you were like chopping down wheat or something, then you would just get your taxes were a couple bales of wheat or something.
What I think
Rather,
is funny is that's what taxes were up until like only like a few hundred years ago.
Mm, well, in
Like
Mesopotamia,
if
they
you were
definitely
just a
had coins.
farmer, most of like medieval Europe and early Renaissance Europe and all that, you were just taxed based on your food or whatever you could provide. If you were like a
Hmm.
silversmith, you would just give silver. Like I don't
True.
know.
Yeah, I
It's
guess
just
I don't know all the details on this because I know like in Mesopotamia they do have coins, like they do have money.
oh, true, but I read the stuff. They still were taxed just on what they produced. It was mostly
Okay.
usually food back then because I know everyone assumes most people are agrarian, but it's crazy how high it is. It's like, like
Hmm.
99.5% of people are agrarian. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, because it just had to make so much food. So what else? There's like some advisors that talked about. There's like the master of the largesse. He supervised like all the food they would collect. There's the overseer of royal works who
Is
kind
that
of
like art?
oversaw the pyramids.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it did talk about how apparently there wasn't really that much commerce. Speaking of like taxation and all this stuff, like most common people would just kind of produce whatever they needed, like clothing, like they would just kind of, I don't know, I guess get some sort of cloth and make the shirt and all this kind of stuff. And salt, oil, actually, and clothing. So sorry, not they don't even they wouldn't even make clothing. Were provided by the estates on which they worked and to which they were bound.
Oh, really? Like more like serfs. I didn't know that kind of thing
Yeah.
existed. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's in Old Kingdom Egypt. It specifically is like that. So maybe by Middle Kingdom it's a little bit different, but I feel like it's
Oh.
probably similar. That's one thing it talked about a lot was just that's one thing that's so fascinating about Egypt is how not just stable, but like how stable the art and the everything about it barely changed for thousands of years. It was like very, very similar,
Hmm.
which even like Mesopotamia feels like it changes more. It's like, oh, the Babylonians and the Assyrians
Yeah.
and whatever's. Let's see. Maybe I'll save some of this for like a future episode because there's a lot of stuff, but there's specifically another like person, what's the term? Like someone that worked for the king, like
Oh,
an
a
official who was like
vizier?
the
Was that the right term?
overseer of Upper Egypt.
Oh, okay.
So kind of like the what would be like another term for that? Like the kind of like a duke or something.
Administrator?
What'd you say?
Like an administrator? I don't know.
Yeah, but someone who
Bureaucrat?
yeah, but like a really high up one who is like literally rules an entire area, but is just
Didn't they
under
call him like they didn't call him
like a
viziers,
viceroy, kind of like a
viceroy.
viceroy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just sort of talked about that and how like one reason why their art was so stable is because it was so connected with like the state, like with the government, which was connected with the religion and how like the state was the thing that was like building all these giant structures. So it had like very strict rules about the art. And it was like
Hmm.
also connected with the religion that it was considered like sacred. Like even the hieroglyphs were um like they were more considered kind of like magical than a lot
Hmm.
more than we think of writing now, but even more than I think ancient people thought about like their writing. It's like apparently the word hieroglyphs means priestly writing, and it
No,
was like a
but
Greek
I guess it
word,
makes sense too that like as much as we think about writing, it's only going to be the aristocracy that even is doing it.
right? And apparently they, you think that a hieroglyph it's just like a picture. It's like okay, like this means bird and this means a person or something, but apparently that's kind of how it started, but it did form sounds. Like it was basically a phonetic alphabet. Like sometimes it would match up with actually meaning something, but it was really just like all right, there's a picture of a bird and that is like ra, and that literally is just like the letters ra.
No, that kind of makes sense because I always wondered,
Yeah.
how some of these old pharaohs they were able to understand their names. You know what I mean? Like Mehet Metep. or Senusret.
Hmm.
Like, how do they know that's what the name was? Even though it was written down, how do you understand from the hieroglyphics that that's the name? So that makes
That's
sense.
how you actually say it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how exactly they would know like this is what sound it makes, but I
Oh no,
figured
no, like you said though, it makes sense. Like once they learned that, it's not just like
Mhm.
because if we didn't know the sounds, then we'd think their name is just like their name is Bird Walker, and it's like what?
Yeah. Well, I know that all stuff is it kind of hurts your brain when you think about it too hard. So, how about I'll save some of this for next time because there was a lot of really cool stuff and it is just kind of general Egypt, but it's a lot of stuff that I feel like, you know, I want to remember to talk about like more random specific things like this rather than it's easy to I think get focused on like, all right, this guy was in charge and he took over these cities and then this guy took a charge, but sometimes it's cool to,
No, it
learn about.
makes sense. I mean, it's cool that you brought up the language too, switching from like literal descriptions to more phonetic, because I know that's what happened with Akkadian and Sumerian. It went from like pictures meaning like this means fish to like this is just the FR sound and this is the IH sound or something like that. Turning more into like a more standard script, if you will.
Yeah. Well, do you want to actually talk about anything in Egypt? I mean, I can go through. So basically, there's a couple different dynasties all happening at about the same time, and we've talked about some of them, but just to sort of summarize, there's essentially, we've talked a lot about the 13th dynasty. They're continuing from the 12th.
And we had the
They're,
14th last episode a little bit. I talked about
yeah, they
them.
collapsed. The 14th, they're
They're in like the Delta region,
the
kind of the
Eastern
Eastern Delta.
Delta.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like a Semitic people, and like the old historians used to focus on like, oh, they invaded and it was this crazy attack, but it seems like now most people think it was more of like just a gradual, they've been moving into
Yeah.
the area and then just sort of ended up being in charge of this area and kind of took control because the former power had weakened so much.
That
Uh,
they're like, why are we not just in charge? It kind of makes
yeah,
sense.
apparently
You're like,
their
yeah.
capital was Avaris.
Yeah.
So is that on here? But that's in like the
Yeah, I mean, it
that
should be on
is.
the, I don't know if it's on
Oh
that
yeah.
map, but it should be on the eastern
Yeah, it's
side.
actually the only thing there. Yeah,
Okay,
and then
that makes
the
sense.
13th, and then I think later after them, the 15th were both centered in Memphis. Um, and then so yeah, the 15th, they don't actually come until the very end of this episode in 1650. The 15th dynasty is going to get established and they are Hyksos. They're like this sort of famous dynasty that are the Hyksos, which I looked it up and I'm still a little bit unclear because it does seem very similar to the 13th dynasty because those were also
Yeah.
like they just weren't called Hyksos, but we just know more about the 15th dynasty and they were more powerful. Um, but they were also centered, yeah, in Avaris. So they,
Oh, the 15th was as well, you're saying.
yeah, and apparently under their rule, the Hyksos, it's believed Avaris. So this is a little bit later, but oh no, sorry, this is between 1670 BC and 1557. It's believed Avaris was the largest city in the world.
Yeah, I had things about it because I mean, it's kind of like a central trading hub when you think that they can get everything from like Egypt
Mhm.
and Nubia. They can get everything from northwestern Africa. They get everything from the Mesopotamia. And then they also get the things from like the Minoans and the people on like Sardinia and the Anatolia. They're getting essentially everything. They're seen as almost like the center of the world for trade, and because they're so multicultural, more people are willing to trade with them because they have those kinds of connections. We're like Minoans, there's some Minoans who live there, and there's some Lebanese that live there, and there's some, Hittites that live there. So it's like they all kind of, yeah, it's cool.
That was one thing I did read was I think that this specific Eastern Delta part is really good because it's, close to a lot. But I weirdly, according to this book, Egypt is like not that connected to a lot of different things. There's something about the Delta, like it makes it hard to actually get into the Mediterranean or get back in or something. So they
Hmm.
it was actually kind of harder than you would think for them. They weren't that's one reason I think they weren't as good at making boats as like the Minoans were, like we were talking about,
Oh
was
no, it
like,
makes sense because it's the
yeah,
river flows into the Mediterranean. So like they're
yeah,
good for trade
going
at their
out. Yeah.
spot. It's not good for them to send goods back up the Nile into Egypt. That's not that
And
easy.
then obviously they have like the desert around them everywhere, but anyway, yeah, he was saying it's strangely like Egypt is strangely kind of isolated, and that's one thing that kind of makes it so special is that it's kind of the only reasonable place to live in the entire area. And so everyone like huddles around this one river and they do trade, but they are like very isolated and kind of that's it kind of makes sense to me why they were able to build such crazy structures and have such powerful pharaohs is it's almost like there was no one really around to sort of like compete with almost.
Yeah, I mean the only people competing with them are further down the Nile or the people coming from the Levantine region. You know what I mean?
Or it's like, yeah, the people that do come in, like we're saying, the Hyksos, they come in, they make their dynasty. It's like they kind of just do what the former Egyptians had already been doing. They just,
Yeah, no, because I forgot I mentioned that last time. I was just like blanking on it that
yeah.
because the 14th dynasty split from the 13th, but they were so much smaller and they were just focused on trade, more like a la Carthage or something like that. It was really easy for someone with a big army to just kind of come in and be like, "This is mine now. I'm in charge here," which is kind of what they did. The Hyksos did. They sort of
Power
came in and said,
vacuum.
"Hey,
Yeah.
I'm in charge now."
And apparently the Hyksos, which this makes sense because I think they're also kind of getting it from like the steppe people that, like I kind of mentioned recently, are coming into like Europe and going down into near like India, and they're pushing people kind of into Mesopotamia and this area, but they're bringing the chariots. So that's
Yeah,
when the Hyksos win, and that's one thing the Egyptians learned from them is they, after this point, they're super into the chariot.
makes sense.
Which
I
you
mean, it's
wouldn't
like
think
it's
unless you
knowledge.
play a lot of like RTSs, real-time strategy games, you might not understand like because a chariot, it's like why would that even really it seems so random, like what even does it do? But it's basically they couldn't really figure out they didn't really ride on horses, right? They only would get
Yeah,
pulled
they were
back.
more like pulling things. Or if they did ride on horses, you needed like two people because it was like impossible to ride and hold a sword or shoot an arrow at the same time. So
That's the
like,
thing they hadn't
yeah.
mastered, which people eventually figure out, but they hadn't figured out how to be able to like ride a horse and shoot a bow and arrow. So they were like, "Oh, we'll just attach this chariot, and then we can shoot arrows from our chariot." So that
Yet
left
again,
it
archers being
over.
vulnerable is usually their negative side. So if you're on a chariot where you can move them around quickly.
Right. I was just watching this video about, I think it was old Ironsides. I might be mixing this up. No, I think it's some boat that was. It was the first. Um,
Flat or something?
Ironclad, yeah, that was during the Civil War. There were the
Oh yeah,
two
there's the
Civil War
two.
ironclads.
It's kind of funny how there were two that both had good designs because they talk about how the Confederate one had traditional cannons, but it had the slanted sides, which made it so that when cannons hit it and stuff like that, they just bounced off.
Right.
Whereas the northern one was
It was like
flat-sided.
super sunk down into the water.
Yeah, and it was flat-sided though, and so it made it easier to hit, but they were the ones to invent instead of cannons along the side, they had two cannons on a platform that could
And
rotate
it would
360
rotate.
degrees, and it
Yeah.
was the OG version of a turret. And people are like,
Right.
"Wait a minute, that's just better." Like, you
It's
know.
weird. Yeah. I mean, it's simultaneously feels crazy that there were like iron battleships during the Civil War that were doing that stuff, but at the same time, it also seems crazy that no one had figured out how to like have a cannon and like rotate it in a circle. Like that seems so
Mhm.
powerful.
It still blows my
Anyway,
mind that it took
yeah.
that long, not just to make that, but to make an iron ship, because you think that like
Yeah.
we're literally the Iron Age is the one after the Bronze Age. We're talking full
True.
on through the Middle
Forget about
Ages
iron a
and the
lot.
Renaissance and the Enlightenment. And it takes after that that someone's like, hey, what if we put the iron on the ship? And to be fair, I'm simplifying it. No one was like that dumb to not think of that. They just didn't know how to do it
There's
in a
some
way that
practical
wouldn't make
reason.
the ship sink. You know,
I'm
like
assuming it's just it's really expensive. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so then at the end of this, and basically in 1650, there's going to be the 16th dynasty, and They are not really that exciting.
Except for being the last one from the intermittent period. So hopefully we're getting out of
Yeah.
that soon.
And basically
So
during this
hopefully.
time, Egypt had three capitals. It had the 13th and the 16th were both centered on Thebes,
Then
which
you
is
had
in
Idjit Tibin was for the 13th, right? No, oh, you said 13th. Sorry. I was thinking of, the
Tawi.
12th had that new capital.
Yeah, Tawi, I think.
Ichtawi. There you go. Yeah, I don't know what I
And
was.
then Avaris, like we said, was the 14th and the 15th. And the I actually don't know what this is. It says the Abydos dynasty was in Abydos, but I didn't actually look into that, so I don't know about them.
I'll
Oh
be
no, they're on here. They have this really
really
tiny thing.
started yet. So that was
Okay.
kind of my
They have
thing.
that little
Didn't do too
area.
much Egypt. I did more Mesopotamia, did more Hittites, did more, there's some other things going on right now.
Well, before we get over there, I did want to say I spent some time the other time. I designed a new little image here for our podcast.
That
Uh,
works. I mean, Babylon is falling, so granted, there's the Neo-Babylonian Empire, but still, before that, so it makes sense to
yeah.
lose the cool Babylonian sphinxes and go to something else.
Well, so yeah, I'm still kind of keeping this for like I needed like a wider image for like the full screen, but it is hard to capture all of history in one image. So, I've been enjoying
You
doing
do it.
my graphic design.
Yeah.
But if we look on our chart going to 1650, I don't know, is there really anything? It's just sort of Babylon's sinking a tiny bit. I don't know. I guess they're doing fine.
Well, you see the Hittites rising because look at like
Hittites
1700.
are super rising. Yeah, that's weirdly they've been rising for a while, but I think it's just that we know that they're big, but we just don't know a ton about what they're doing yet. They haven't like
Yeah.
invaded into
And it's funny,
Mesopotamia.
Elam is still there. Another one we don't know a ton about that keeps popping up
Mhm.
into Mesopotamian history. I mean, I know they've got the
Elam.
bronze or
Yeah.
tin, to be fair, to make
No,
the bronze.
they essentially never really fall out of, they're always a powerful area.
They're always powerful, but like they're always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Like they're strong and they're there, but they're never like in charge of Mesopotamia.
I
They
guess, but I
control
kind of
little
consider
chunks.
the Persians are essentially like Elam, so
Yeah.
eventually they
Well,
can.
no, not really, right? That's a little bit later.
I'm saying the area though.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
So anyway, going into it, here's a little map of, I don't know why it's so zoomed in. There we go. It's either like, I guess this is the full map.
You might be able to zoom out. Who knows? I don't know.
Because yeah, it's only showing like the western part. Oh no, there we go. Anyway, um, I've got here that this guy, Ami Ditani, ruled in Babylon, and he was peaceful. He enriched the temples. He did some building projects. And then he has a son, Ami Saduka. I don't know. I feel like you probably know more about these kings and stuff than I do. Did you want to talk about any of them?
For which kings, though? Are you saying?
I guess
Of
anyone in Mesopotamia. I was just talking about in Babylon. It was Ami Datana and Ami Saduka, father and
yeah,
son.
and I just did Ammi because he goes all the way till 1647.
Oh, true,
So,
true. Yeah, I went too far. Never mind.
and his reign is very peaceful, but it's sort of peaceful because he's finally the one to accept that they're losing all this territory and they're not going to get it back. Like Sealand is coming in. Asher is there, but like the more I read about like Asher is as much as like the thing shows it as kind of like an empire or a kingdom, they're more like a loose confederation of cities that are just paying homage or just giving tribute to Asher, but Asher isn't controlling them in the same way that like a lot of these empires
Mhm.
would be. Um Yamhad is there, and what's throwing me off is the Hittites technically are there, but we're more in the early Hittite era. So Ami Ditan or Ditana, he is just he ruled for 37 years, which still blows my
Wow.
mind back then. And that's ruling. So like he was alive for longer than that.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought was interesting, it's tangent, but it's still related to this. So after Hammurabi and then his son, the whole Sumer and Akkad thing had been dying out, and I don't just mean how I said it was being depopulated and we got Lancy on the bottom. Most people, instead of thinking of Mesopotamia as Sumer and Akkad, just saw that whole region as, oh, that's Babylonia. Like it shows just a cultural shift in identity that this is just Babylonia. And so Babylon was seen as the spiritual center and not Nippur anymore. Nippur was still kind of there, but it was more like a junior one where,
Sad.
um, yeah. And so it's more just that, Babylon is now the spiritual center of where everything is. And so he kind of just focuses on that. By he, I mean Amidatana, the great grandson. He's just focusing on peace, building up the walls of the city, just trying to, build new construction projects, new canals, more farming, trying to he does go to Nippur and he makes some dedications and stuff. But it's more as sort of a sign of like, I'm respecting this city, but Babylon is still the center. I'm just trying to show
Mhm.
that, I care about, you
It's
know,
almost like the historical capital of like a country, which we don't really have in the US, but I mean, it'd almost be like, actually, we kind of do. It'd be like
what, Philadelphia versus DC
Williamsburg,
or something.
Virginia, or something, or
Yeah.
like Jamestown or
Yeah.
something.
So it's kind of like that. And so his reign is kind of boring's the wrong way to say it because I mean, boring is good when you're a citizen, when you're a king, not really fighting many wars, not much is going on. It's just more dedicating to temples, building new
Yeah,
work
the
projects,
classics.
things like that. And so, yeah,
One
that was
does.
kind of it. And to get 37 years out of it with not much trouble up until his 37th year, he had a successful military campaign.
Do you think
Um,
the old people at this time were like nostalgic for Nipper? They're like, back in my day, we worship at Nipper, not this Babylon.
what's funny is I get what you're getting at, but it's been so far gone from that too now that it's something like
Yeah.
that because Hammurabi is
No, but
1792.
you have to remember this is in the past. Remember in the Bible, it's like Methuselah lives for like 1,000 years.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're living for like 1,000 years, you're like, yeah, I remember Nippur. I remember the Akkadians. I remember, I mean, guys throwing back Isin and Larsa. Remember when that's all we cared about?
I
Hell, I remember
remember
when
the old
Isin was there and
kingdom
I
of
was like, who
Egypt.
the hell is Larsa? I was like, I don't even understand who that is. And now Larsa's long gone too.
They're the Sealand now.
They
Yeah.
are. And I kept trying to do more research on them, and there's basically just not much. They're holding on to like these old swamplands that, again, these cities have been mostly depopulated. They're not gone, but they're shadows of their former
Mhm.
self. So they are not important. So they're just sort of like Sealand's just kind of holding on to the remnants of what once was.
It feels like they're a. It's because Sealand reminds me so much of SeaWorld that it just feels like they were like a once great company that got bought by like a mega corporation, and now they're just like Sealand
I
and
mean, funny enough, that's what happened. I mean, the Sealand Empire was just Sumer got sold to private equity, and so
right,
they're
and they
kind of
just
just
took
selling
them apart
everything.
for pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just how it works.
You hate to
So
see
there
it.
is.
Actually, that I just watched Pretty Woman, and that strangely is a plot point in that
Wait,
movie.
seriously? I haven't seen the movie in forever, but I did not realize
Yeah,
that.
I'd never seen it.
All
The
I
guy,
know is the famous line where you've made a big mistake.
huge.
Huge.
I
Yeah.
actually did not really know that line, but the guy, Richard Gere, that sounds weird,
Queer? No, maybe you're right, gear.
was like a whatever they're called, where they literally what I just said, like an
No,
actual
I know. A private equity guy,
private
investor.
equity guy who just buys stuff but he changes his ways by the end, which is nice.
Yeah. The prostitutes tend to do that to you.
If they're Julia Roberts, they do.
Well, of course. I mean, I just watched what's it? Ocean's 11.
That is,
Oh, and
yeah,
he
another
thought it
good
was
Julia
someone else.
Roberts.
It threw me off so much. Now I can't remember. I was cracking up because he thought it was someone else. He didn't think it was Julie Roberts. He was like, damn it, now I can't remember, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. But it was another very popular actress from the time, but it was just really funny.
Wow,
Where I was
that's
like, no,
insane.
that's Julia Roberts, and Peter was like, all right, I'm gonna leave now.
She literally
Um,
plays herself in the movie. But all right, do you want to talk about Assyria?
well, I don't have a lot about Assyria because again, they were kind of in a civil war and someone kind of just came out on
Yeah.
top.
Oh,
So I was focusing more on early Hittites because the Hittites technically aren't there. Even though the photo is showing Hittites, it's like that's they're like the precursor to the Hittites. So it's I did some research on the kingdom of Kusara.
tell me about them. What?
So there's only of all the kingdoms, it's so funny.
Wait,
There's
where are
only
they? First of all, though, where are they?
well, they are in like the middle southern. Wait, do you see it here? Let me. I'm looking at your map now. You can kind of see it. Do you
I
see
see
it right
the
above?
site. Is it the Kassites?
No, 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 no. Underneath it. You know where you see Nessa, and then you go up to the right. It's Kusara.
Uh, yeah.
Underneath
Yep.
Sarissa.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially, what happened was this is just a kingdom that literally only had two kings. And essentially, the one of the guy, this has mostly been a tribal region because this region is rich in copper and tin, so they can do a lot of trade, but is very poor in farming land and stuff like that.
It's
So
like
it's
very mountainous and rugged up there.
yeah, and so it's been mostly just little tribes kind of doing their own thing, and
This is
these
in
were
like
the first,
Anatolia, basically, like in like
yeah, and these were the first
in
people to come
Anatolia.
in, and technically they did it a little before us, but we had Pithana, Pithana,
That's the
um,
guy, the king.
the first king, and he
Okay.
took um Kanesh, which is nearby, in like a raid, and he essentially was like, "All right, this is going to be our new trading hub because they had a lot of trade and stuff like that, and like I'm going to be in charge of this region." Then his son takes over, um, and his son is Anita, and he essentially goes after everyone in the region. He's essentially going for so he goes for Kusara, makes that the capital. Then he goes over into what's the name of it? Hattusa, and then goes for I apologize, I had it written down. It starts with a Z, but now I can't remember.
I
Oh,
don't
here
even
we
see
go.
it on this map, so it couldn't.
Zalpua. Zalpua would be up on the Black Sea. Um,
Okay. Oh, I see it. Yeah, Zalpa.
Yeah.
No, no,
I
that's what it says
apologize.
here. Yeah.
Anyway,
Basically, this
and
whole
so,
pink area on this map.
but that's what I mean. This is before they're Hittites because the Hittite name
Okay.
comes from Hittua, that city. But
Oh,
what's
okay. I looked this up last time. Okay, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah. Yeah. And so what's
that's
funny
funny.
is he takes all of this and
Yeah.
he wages a war. He basically destroys that city. And he's basically like, screw it. And then he literally puts, I think it's the funniest thing, he puts like a curse where like, I
Hmm.
have sown weeds into your land and salt into your soil, and anyone who ever lives here will like never rise again and all this stuff. And he basically destroys it. And honestly, he was doing like the OG things that the Persians used to do and the Assyrians do, where he's essentially anyone who resists without a, or who doesn't resist without a fight and just joins them. He's like, all right, you join, you get to stay who you are, you just pay tribute to me, and you can keep being king.
Hmm.
You can do whatever you want. Anyone who doesn't, I'm like burning your city down. I'm kidnapping your women. I'm enslaving everyone and murdering all the men. And so he becomes the first great king of Anatolia. Now, it's not all of Anatolia, but again, this region had for so long, while Mesopotamia is doing its whole thing, while Elam and Ashur are doing their thing, this is just like a region that they're like, oh yeah, we just trade with them for tin, and now they're literally becoming an empire to be reckoned with. Now, this is the beginning of it, though. So we are not the Hittites. They considered themselves the Kashara. That's what they called
Okay.
themselves.
But it is the Hittites.
It's what would become the Hittites because they control that region. They are that ethnicity. But the Hittites only get their name from Hittua, rebuilding Hittua, which will happen in the next episode. Um, the guy's name is where is it? Hattusili, and he just means man of Hittusa. He's the one who starts the that sort of Hittites being their own thing.
No,
And
that's
so
funny
this
that
guy
you
goes
kind
through
of
and he's just
fell. Yeah.
he's we say like people build on what's before. He was the first one to kind of come in and say, "Hey, I'm like building an empire, or at least the beginnings of an empire that will become the Hittite Empire in Anatolia. We're no longer a loose confederation, not even a confederation, I guess, a loose assortment of just states that are trading, that are getting tin and doing all this stuff. No, we're a united people, and we do all this,
Oh,
and we're like one." And I just think it's really
yeah.
interesting. He yeah, the first true pan-Anatolian empire. And again, it's before the Hittites, but a lot of the Hittites consider this their forefather, even though he's not the
I
same
think, yeah,
dynasty.
I think for everyone, like, because it's funny that you're falling down this rabbit hole because I did the same thing a couple weeks ago when I talked about the Hittites, and like, yeah, it gets a little bit weird, but I feel like the easiest way to say it is like they essentially are the Hittites. It's just that's what other people call them, but
Yeah.
there's something's about to happen in Mesopotamia in the next couple like centuries.
Well, and that's why. So I have the precursor for the actual Hittites because this is technically the two guys I talked about are would have been last week's episode. I just wanted to bring them up because they're the ones who set this in motion. And
Hmm.
then essentially their whole kingdom just falls apart. And then there's this guy named Labarna. I think I'm saying that right. Labarna, yeah. And he essentially rebuilds that city and is like, okay, we're going to make a Hittite empire. Like I'm going to rebuild what they built. It'd been about 50 years because again, I did so much research trying to figure out what time period because it just said literally it said when did he reign and it said 1700. It didn't even say 1700s. And it says because it's so hotly debated because all the chronologies are like, oh, he ruled from like 1730 to like 1715. And they're like, yeah, well, his dad was a contemporary with the son of Hammurabi or the grandson of Hammurabi, which would mean his dad would have been alive and ruling during that time period. So the son must be in the 1700 time period. And it's like, okay, well, when did he die then? And they're like, oh, I don't know. So
Yeah.
he's not, but he's the key thing is he's not mythological. He's a real person who did exist and did do things. It's just that he kind of became this almost mythological figure for them. Same with this Labarna guy, where it's literally like a Caesar situation where they're not sure if he was the one who essentially rebuilt that city and wanted to remake the dynasty. And he actually is the first of the Hittite dynasty. Um, but what's weird is his name again is La, Labarna. But what people aren't sure is his successor. I don't think he's his son. Maybe he is a grandson, brother. Anyway, is called Labarsa the Second, but his name is also Hattusili, which means man from Hittusa. And so what people are wondering is Labarna, like by people I mean historians, they're like, is Labarna actually his name? Or was it the title they gave to the king?
Yeah.
Or is it like a Caesar situation from Rome where like Caesar was the first one and he was so impactful that
Yeah.
people took his name and the name became a title.
Hmm. Or
So I
like,
don't know.
yeah, even like Czar. Yeah,
Yeah.
title.
And so no inscription survived from his actual reign, but all of the stuff is built from imperial texts coming after the fact. So that's why people are like, well, maybe they're just saying like it'd be like if we didn't know about Julius Caesar, and they're just like they just talk about Caesar one, original Caesar. And you're like, that's probably just the first emperor of Rome. That makes sense. Like if we didn't know about him, and then it's like so people debate was his name in this case, using the same metaphor, was his name Caesar or was that his title? Like, what do we
I
like? What
guess
is
we'll never
this?
know.
Yeah, and we really won't. So that's the crazy thing.
That's the question. Question of the week. We should have a question of the week, like
Yeah.
something that we wonder.
How many? How many?
Acorns can you fit into a sarcophagus?
Oh wow, you were close though, because I was just gonna say how many dog bones am I holding on to right now? Because I'm just that's what I'm
Oh,
messing with right now on
oh
the
wow.
left.
Well, it was
Um,
connected by bones.
But that's what's so funny. He was succeeded by Labarna the Second, famously known as Hattusi the First, Hattusili the First. So it's like,
Famously, everyone knows this.
well, dude, are you kidding me? You don't see like my poster, my Hattusili poster up on the side? Yeah, that's
Oh,
clearly
Fish.
he had a huge impact on my life. He's the reason I went to electrical engineering. But whatever, we can pretend like he's a
That's a
people
story for
figure.
another day.
Um, So sorry, I kind of went down that rabbit hole. Like you said, I just
Yeah.
thought it was interesting. I wanted to set that up because next week is going to be Hatu Sealy, and like we're full on into the Hittites that are as much as we haven't talked about them much because again they're
Well, we
just kind of
did. We spent that like 2 episodes ago. We did a whole like thing on
oh
them.
true. What I meant though is I didn't realize until doing my research like the Hittites are way more major players and had a much bigger impact on this time period than anyone in Mesopotamia.
Wait, you're hitting the mic. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Did I? Can you hear me? Oh.
I can hear you. I just yeah.
No, so all I mean is the Hittites had a bigger impact on the Middle Bronze Age than like Mesopotamia did.
Right.
Once they hit the scene, to be fair, Mesopotamia
Yeah.
owns this like early Bronze Age, this early Middle Bronze Age. But like when the Hittites come on the scene, I didn't realize that they're like the ancient Rome of this time period. Like I know that's not a great correlation, but like you get what I mean.
Hey, I mean, I brought them up for a reason.
Yeah.
We knew it was coming. Well, yeah, so I did want to talk a little bit about China because we had mentioned last week now we are officially in the Shang dynasty.
Oh no, wait. I what I read is that we're
Mhm.
not.
Well, I don't know. This thing says 1766 or 1600.
Okay, I've only heard 1600, yeah. So that's why I was thrown off.
I guess the traditional dating is 1766, but the archaeological evidence is 1600. So we
Okay.
can save it. I don't really have anything to say, but it's just like that is happening because that's the first time that it actually is historical.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think I brought this up last time. The only reason they know they existed was because people during like the Ming Dynasty, one of the more recent ones, like,
Hmm.
from only a few hundred years ago, there was like a disease or something was going around, and people thought that you needed to drink dragon soup, which was like dragon bones ground up into a soup. But essentially, what it was a bunch of local people were just taking turtle shells and other bones that they were finding, grinding them up and putting them into soup. And then somebody started noticing, hey, a lot of these shells were not shells, but a lot of these bones and turtle shells we're digging up. Why do they have markings all over it? And why do the markings look like, archaic Chinese? Like, what is this? And they're like, oh, these are ritualistic bones. Which, okay, now it's coming to me. Yeah, we talked about this last time, but like, that's how they realized that this existed. They said literally until the late 21st century, they only knew about the Zhong dynasty. That that was the earliest it went.
Right.
Until they started digging up these bones and stuff, and they realized that the
Digging
city
up
where people were
thin
digging these
bone,
up was the
digging.
old capital of the Xiong dynasty. And then they're like, wait a minute, so the Xiong isn't just mythical, they do exist.
And I think it was Shia LaBeouf that dug them up, right? In the movie Holes.
Yeah, that's actually why they're digging the whole time.
Right.
Um,
They're digging up ancient
I'm trying
Chinese.
to. I'm ruining the joke by saying it right now, but what is the prophecy again? Remember, like a Yelnats will carry
I haven't
Zelensky.
watched Holes in like 20 years. I
Oh,
don't know.
nobody has to carry her up the hill to drink water. I wish
You
I could
just stop
remember.
bringing things up that you don't remember. You're like, what's that? And I'm like, I have no idea.
It just was so like not
It's
important
a
to me, I
great
think, like
movie.
so
I mean,
iconic.
I'm
Well, I
tired
read
of
the
this,
book. We all read
Grandpa.
the book.
That's too damn bad.
The movie was really
Uh,
good, considering I enjoyed the book.
it's an
So
amazing movie and a great book. Yeah.
it is
It's
also
one of the
great soundtrack. I don't know if people know.
well, actually, I mean, yeah, just that one song alone.
Digging up them holes, digging.
I
Digging
think
up.
we should maybe wrap it up there.
Okay, yeah, we can wrap it up here.
Um, next, I will say, I'll end it on this because also I thought it just had a cool. I brought it up last time. In the Indus Valley, there's the Cemetery H culture. I thought that was a cool name.
That is a
Um,
cool name.
oh, also, wait. I'll say them, but then after that, you never brought up Poverty Point, did you?
Oh yeah, I'll be honest. It was getting a little long, and I realized I could probably just bring them up next time because we only know about their culture, and it lasted for 600 years. So it can make a good talking point for the next episode too. It's just to be fair, in
Okay.
1700 is when they're starting, but that's totally fine. It'll make it
All
good.
right.
I have a lot of notes on them. We can really dig into it next
Well,
time.
last time I mentioned Cemetery H. This time we're mentioning Poverty Point. And I did
Yes.
look up, I don't know, did I ever tell you this? Because we were wondering why is it called Poverty Point, and then
Yes.
Google would just say that it's named after a 19th century plantation named
Yeah, and then
Poverty
we are like,
Point.
well, why was the
It's like,
plantation?
yeah, I don't care about that. I mean, that's interesting, but I want to know why Poverty Point. That's not a normal thing to call something. What's funny is that it's not like you'd think it's some sort of weird, like, I don't know if anyone's watching the show Widow's Bay, where it's like this creepy island and it's like, oh, it's Widow's Bay. It actually is similar to that, but it's really just that apparently this area um, in Mississippi, I believe, was just a bad area. Basically, it was very unpredictable with the river, and
Hmm.
so it was essentially just a pejorative term for like a struggling farm. A lot of places apparently in that area would just call themselves like hell or whatever,
It's
just because it
funny how
was
they
like,
just fully lean into it. They're like, whatever.
yeah.
It'd be like if you're like, oh, this base sucks, so we call it Crap Bay. It's like, okay. I mean, if
It
that's
is
what you
funny because
want.
I do feel like we don't a lot of times think about people in the past having like a sense of humor. We always assume it's like super serious, but it's like no, they realized this was just a horrible place, but they had no other choice. So they were just like, well, we'll just call it Poverty Point because we're
I
poor.
grew up in Poverty Point.
Poverty Point. Anyway, that is what we'll talk about next week. But I did look up Cemetery H. Basically, comes after the Indus Valley civilization, but there seemed to basically be sort of a continuation. And some people think that it represents the first wave of the Indo-Aryan migrations, which might have started in like 1900, but they're getting like kind of more into this area. And some of their calling cards, their distinguishing features are they use cremation, which is interesting. We've heard about mummies and we've heard about burying, but I didn't know cremation was that old.
Mm.
And um, I guess they used had reddish pottery. They drew in black like antelopes, peacocks, sun and star motifs, and they had kind of different designs in the Indus Valley period. And they expanded to the east into India. I think they started growing rice. Maybe the Indus Valley wasn't growing as much rice, but
That is interesting to think about because, I think of it as more like much more Eastern than that. So that's kind of cool.
and apparently though it was a breakdown in the trade because there was less stuff like I guess like shells that would have come more from like the Mediterranean weren't making their way that far, so they weren't trading as much, or maybe there
Hmm.
was something going on in like Elam or something where they were getting blocked.
Interesting.
And yeah, they used mud brick for building. But that's Cemetery H. They're in
Oh.
India. They're there for a while. And I think that's all for this week. So just like I predicted, we covered over twice as much time as last episode, but we're like 20 minutes shorter, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But still respectable. I feel like a 40, we're at 46 minutes. I feel like that's kind of an ideal.
So yeah, no, I'll be honest. I'm teasing people a little bit. It's why I didn't want to go into Poverty Point because I could talk about that for like 20 minutes because it was very much more interesting than I was expecting it to be.
All right, give
So,
us one thing.
um, it's a civilization that's built before um agriculture.
Wow. Okay, I think let's just leave it on that. All right. Just like the Poverty Point civilization, they were lost to time, and it's
Yes.
time for us to get lost.